Hello and welcome to Correro, where we examine Nigerian political and landscape and also try to examine the issues shaping Nigerians' future. I am Godwin Sunday. Well, we'll look at a lot of issues tonight, but our focus will be beamed around the issue around gender and trying to reimagine women in and let's not use women, but let's use the females in the cross-gender sector policy framework across the country, where we've had a lot of debate, a lot of conversation around this space, and we've also had quite a lot of patriarchal and matriarchal conversations around this space where a lot of traditionalists believe that a woman should not be given an opportunity to be in the national outlook. But then a lot of conservationists also told that path. But then revolutionists believe that in Africa we need to look the other way around in order to move the continent from where it was to where it should be as a people. Well, the question begging for answer is, how effective and how ready are the African women to dive into owning and controlling the political space and be able to control governance and provide adequate solutions across board? Well, these are the questions that are begging for answer. But then tonight we have with us in the studio Nafisat Atiku Adejuwon, who she is the executive director of NAF Foundation for Young Women, and she'll be helping us put the record straight. If women are supposed to be in the space of governance, how effective have women participation in the governance space been, and how can we help to correct the misinterpretation and of course a lot of misconception around women owning the governance space? Well, we'll look at all of this and try to x-ray and bring you perspective in all of this issue in order to help you create a perspective and a balance on what should be and chart a new course for Nigeria, because right now a lot of people will say that Nigeria is in dire need of leadership, and of course they will say women and genders, women can chart a new course for Nigeria, but then they are not given the right opportunities. But then we'll x-ray all of these issues tonight, and of course we'll look at all of this. Don't forget that you can join the conversation on our very social media handle currently showing on your screen, and you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast right now. Well, we'll go for a short break, and when we return, we'll delve into the conversation. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Well, with me in the studio is Mrs. Nafisat Atiku, and of course we'll be trying to look at some of the issues that affect Nigeria. But first, you're welcome to Correro.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
All right, so let's delve into the business of the day. First, let's try to assess women participation in governance. How would you assess the current landscape of women's participation in governance across the public, private, and the civil society sector? How will you assess this so far? Because there have been speculations that women try to shy away from governance. Just 10% of Nigerian women tend to participate in the government space. But then, in your own opinion, how will you assess the generality of women participation in governance?
Right. So when we speak about women's participation in governance, I'm going to, at the minimum, start with politics and political leadership, and that refers to public sector governance. The numbers are terrible. They are dismal, and they're embarrassing for a so-called African giant. Currently across our legislative arm of government, I think we have less than 5% representation of women across not just the Senate, but also across the House of Reps. And, if you go to the Interparliamentary Union website, you will see our ranking when it comes to gender inclusivity in our public sector leadership, and that refers to our political offices. And it's terrible. We have several smaller African countries that are doing a lot better than we are doing. And then, examples are South Africa, Sierra Leone, just right there. Rwanda, of course, is a leader on the continent. And, it's Ethiopia as well. And, we keep on carrying this tag saying, we are the African giant when it comes to leadership, entertainment, innovation, whatever it is. But yet the representation or our decision-making bodies in public sector do not reflect the inclusion and diversity of our populace. And it's not just about women, but I'm going to really focus on women because that's the topic of this conversation today. If you go to the private sector, obviously in the private sector, women do a lot better because the barriers are a lot lower. Right, there are obviously the conversations on power dynamics, but women, if you're able to prove yourself in the private sector as well, the same way as any other person, it doesn't mean that there are no biases or stereotypes. But in the private sector, we have gotten better at dismantling those biases and stereotypes to have women who are serving as the CEOs and heads of banks. See, for instance, Zenith Bank, see, for instance, Fidelity Bank. We have women who power the economy through their small, medium enterprises as well. Different aviation, entertainment, we see women constantly breaking barriers. But when it then comes to public sector leadership, that's a tricky conversation on its own because that is the seat of power in our society, right? And the power dynamics are incredibly skewed, starting not just, within political office itself, but even starting from the political parties themselves and how, they are structured to shut out women by default. They were not created with the intent of having women within to function and exercise their rights within the political parties. You don't have to go far. Just take a look and look at your constitution. The language is the best indicator of the intention of the person who drafted the legislation. They say chairman. They say the only office that is left apart for the woman is obviously the national women leader. And some cases, if you don't put your foot on the floor, you will say a man that is jumping to take the position of national women leader. Within like, for example, this is not to throw any state under the bus, but for example, look at Kano State. All their legislators are men. So the person who is the chairperson in charge of the Women's Affairs Committee in Kano State is a man. And then you invite that man to civil society events to talk about gender-based violence and child marriage and other issues. And it's a paradox, it's an irony, it's a contradiction. It's almost like as if it's against nature. And for Nigeria, that is one of the literally the largest black nation on this planet, knowing how much the future workforce of the world will be determined by Africa, but mostly by Nigeria because we are so many. Our leadership does not reflect the potential and diversity of its populace, and that's by shutting women out, and that has to change.
Well, for a lot of men, they will say that women deliberately shut out themselves politically, and a lot of women don't want to get involved in the political space. Looking at the statistics of women that get involved within the political landscape of Nigeria, we have about 10 over 100 of women that want to get involved. But looking at this, in your view, which policy reforms are most urgent to accelerate women's representation in national and subnational governance?
So, you know, when it comes to the issue of saying that women don't want to be in office or don't want to run for office, I think that's that. First of all, I think that we need to interrogate that perspective and interrogate that data, because I absolutely think it's not true.
But you know for a fact that a lot of women shy away from the political space.
No, no,
A
no.
lot of Nigerian women try to look at the society as being a patriarchal society.
It is a patriarchal
and
society.
as such, the matriarchalism of the society doesn't play out. And as such, a lot of women will hide under the shadows of the men and create a women faction to support their political parties. And we don't see women emerging within the political landscape. So let's get back to the question: are there urgent reforms that we need to place right now in order to accelerate national and subnational women participation in governance?
Yes, of course. There's a reserved seats bill that is currently, that's currently up for voting within the National Assembly. So that's a pivotal bill that, if passed, would change the outlook of public sector governance in Nigeria for at the minimum the next 20 years. That bill basically demands.
Is it realistic?
Yes, it's realistic. Other countries who have done, great in representation and inclusivity in their public sector systems have adopted a certain type of affirmative quota to ensure that women are represented.
So if you're saying, well, I'm asking if it's realistic because on the fact that it borders on the fact that if we're saying women are going to be represented in certain positions across the country, can we then say that we're going to mandate each state to present a woman to contest, knowing fully well that right now, as it stands, the political culture and political orientation, be it cognitive, affective, and cognitive orientation of the woman politically, is largely being dwindled. A lot of women don't want to participate. But this bill even move the women to participate? And if yes, are we going to compare the women from each state or assign seats to each state to bring women representation? Or let's get your opinion on this.
All right. So please allow me to explain a lot of things.
Right.
Please allow me to explain. The question you're asking is in two layers. One, it deals with the issue of women not wanting to participate, and it deals with what the reserve seats bill wants to do. Anyone watching the show, I would encourage you to go on Google and search for the reserve seats bill for women and understand what it's trying to say. From the state houses of assembly to the House of Representatives to the Senate House, it specifically provides for quotas for women in all legislative arms from the state up to the federal level. That's one. The issue of women, not wanting to participate, and when we talk about, the stereotypes that exist in society and the patriarchal norms and structures and power dynamics that exist, right? There is the conversation of having to interrogate what happens at the grassroots level entering into the political party system. So when we say women don't want to participate, people usually take the data that says, oh, how many women are running etc, etc, oh, just 10 out of 30 or 10 out of 100 or 5 out of 20 or 5, and they take that figure and they use it to craft a particular narrative that women don't want to participate. Meanwhile, the better reality and the more factual reality is that women want to participate, and they enter and they get blown out. They enter, they get blown out, and they keep on trying and trying and trying again. If you want to really know how many women are participating in politics, go down to the grassroots at the entry points entering into the political system. That's where you find them. You have, for example, I have a very not nice story, but it is what it is. Take, for instance, the women leader in Kogi State that was burnt in her house some years back. Or do we talk about it? I'm not going to mention, of course, the names and anything because it's privacy. But a few years back, there was a woman in northern Nigeria that was running for elections at the local government level. They raped her. And she couldn't contest again because she was too traumatized in the presence of her son. So when you say that women don't want to, right, you need to actually go down and see what is happening. Women want to. It's either they are mobilizing or campaigning or pushing or acting. For example, we were having a discussion before this, but my husband has run for office before. His ward chairman is a woman. So women are actually working, especially at the grassroots. But it's almost like corporate. Sometimes you can liken it to the corporate world where it says that, women are not very much represented in leadership, that at some point in time, they start very well at the beginners and then they move to the mid-level and then you see them peak or drop because one, maybe they get married and they have children, or it's not easy for them to balance work and home. That's the same analogy you can literally draw to the political space. At the bottom, you will see women conglomerated, a lot of them acting in different capacities, trying to run for office, being candidates, being mobilizers, being fundraisers, being a whole lot of different things. But they peak in a very patriarchal political society that does not, prioritize women's interests and representation, and they come down. And then they keep on trying to go up and come down. Now, what the reserved seats bill is trying to do is correct an anomaly within our society that will take, maybe in the next 50 to 100 years after generations and generations has passed, by mandating by law, right, that political parties have to produce this particular set of people. So you're saying you are going to create certain zones, and women, those zones must be represented by women. It's not a debatable issue. So it's an issue of now supply and demand. Now the conversation is not about we're looking for, because we're looking for women, they are there. It's not about looking for the right one to fix within those positions, Senate House, House of Reps, State House of Assembly. Because if you want women, there are a lot of women. But because they keep on trying to break through those ceilings, they hit a glass ceiling, or let's say a wooden ceiling, and they come back and they try again. So women, they back out completely and say, you know what, I need to take a break. Because you have women that have run for elections, they ran with everything they have, they lost everything they have, lost jobs, lost financial, properties, etc. And they have to take a step back in order to recover. It's not like, and we all know how economic power is in our country. Men have issues running for office with all the financial overheads, talk less of women. And we know how the issues of economic dependence and economic power are skewered in our society. So basically, I think that's, the two-layered question. We have women that want to run. Break down those barriers for men to run, and then you see how they perform. And then the reserved seats bill is not a question of would. No, it is mandated by law. And once it's mandated by law, you will have to fill it in. That's just it. All
right. So let's talk about. You've mentioned quite a lot of issues here.
Yeah.
So let's look at. Of course, we've talked about the patriarchal nature.
Yes.
Of Africa and by extension Nigeria, which tend to embrace the patriarchal nature and try to deprive the women of participating. But then it's not completely deprivation. We have a lot of communities in Nigeria, especially from the southwestern part of Nigeria, that try to amalgamate the old matrilineal system, looking at the structure of the Yoruba nature, looking at also other parts of the country. But then this question is it has a two-leg. The first question is the fact that a lot of women in Nigeria tend to look the other way when it has to do with political participation. They believe that politics, it's a business for the men, and as such, women should not be involved in the political space except they want to be disrespectful to the men. On the other leg, we have a lot of gender issues when it has to do with the confidence of the Nigerian women, trying to even understand that, of course, they can and participate within the political space. Now, this brings us to that two different balance. But then, in order to address this concern, how do we begin to reorientate the Nigerian women, especially the girl child who is watching right now, to understand that politics is not about gender, is not gender-based, but everybody can participate. And what is NAF doing in this regards?
Well, to be honest, I think we're a lot better than we were 10 years ago. And, 10 years ago, a lot of young women, at least, I knew a lot of older women who had, been, I was in church, I saw people that I looked up to running for office in Lagos state elections. A lot of the older women were really getting into it. The younger generation was a problem, however. But I think that that's slowly coming to an end, because we see a lot of young women, not just in Abuja, but across Nigeria, who are deeply agitated about the state of our nation.
You mean the Gen Zs?
Not just the Gen Zs, I'm a millennial, and that's the generation I grew up with. But it's not just about Gen Zs. I mean, from that, so basically that 1990 generation down to, the Gen Z generation.
No, I'm asking because of the Gen Zs that right now people say that Gen Zs are not even ready for leadership. Not ready for governance.
No, they are. They, but they are young. And the thing with being young is that you do need a lot of institutional knowledge to be able to wield power responsibly, and that's the thing. That's why we always, at the NF Foundation for Young Women, always emphasize on intergenerational dialogue, because we run a foundation for young women, and one of our core pillars is political leadership. And we realize that without a level of intergenerational conversations to transfer the knowledge, the systems, the structures, and the frameworks to the younger generation, we're definitely going to be missing a gap, and we're going to be breaking a wheel. And that's it. And that, conversation doesn't just even apply both in political leadership, it applies in leadership across board. So 10 years ago, it wasn't, at least from my perspective as a young person, it wasn't good. Right now, it's better. You have people who are actively following on social media. Even if you're being an active citizen on social media, at least you are better than what I used to see, right? And you have them, you call for protest, you see young women coming out to protest and to look at the various protests that we've had in our country. You see a lot of them now tripping and asking you, how can I join this political party? How can I run for office? How can I be? And then we have different fellowships that have popped up. We have the Emerging Political Leaders Fellowship by Senator Liel Emoke, of which I was a beneficiary of. We have the Legislative Mentor Initiative by the former House of Reps member Femi Bajabiamila, who is now Chief of Staff to the President. We have different initiatives, youth leadership political programs, who are focused on making sure that and reorientating the Nigerian youth that leadership is, not something you should shy away from. It is something that you should step forward to with a level of responsibility. But also going on to the other part of the question of what more can we do, is to keep on doing what we are doing and amplify it more. And if I dare say, carry it more into the schools. So, for example, I've always come from a political family, but my first proper interaction with, engaging like a political system was when they told me in high school to run for office as a dormitory prefect. And I was 14 years old, making speeches, doing manifestos, writing my manifestos, campaigning among the student population. That was my first real experience of performing civic action in a simulation process. And schools need more of that. Schools need more of putting your kids, your words to civic and political actions and seeing how they perform. They do it in other countries that have a strong nationalistic identity, countries like the US and other different countries. They know and understand their national values, and national values is also actually a thing. We just rounded up a project that was funded by a non-profit in the US, which focused on the Jeffersonian principles of education, civic education, and education most importantly, and the civic rights of a citizen. And just basically, reading through those, doing a lot of book readings, doing a lot of presentations, doing a lot of community reading, we were able to impact like a lot of young women to understand that coming from one side, some of them were more reserved civic actors to more outspoken civic actors. So, education is really key. Right, and as far as we want to do it, in every form, radio, television, memes, skits, that the younger generation is coming up and now they prefer all things digital. Well, maybe they might not sit down to read a 500-page book, but they are going to watch a meme, on social media. That's what people like Zikoko Citizen are doing, and Gatefield also are doing, using pop culture and the internet to provide a level of civic education. Can come literally in any form. People use arts these days, people use spoken word, but I think education, not just cycloned to the four walls of a school, but in whatever shape and form, is what is needed to change the orientation, and also role modeling. Role modeling in a way can even be even more powerful when you see a male ally, a male figure nominating another woman for political office or for leadership. It then makes it seem more normal, because it is supposed to be normal that women can actually lead, but more importantly that men can support women to lead. I think also the word there, because whenever we talk about gender equality or gender equity, people make it seem like I see the women are coming to control and talk about everything, control and take over everything. And language is also super important. It declares the unconscious intention of the writer, of the speaker. It's about co-leadership, because we can't have a society that is overrun by women. Neither can we have a society that is overrun by men. But we can co-lead together. That's what makes it inclusive, holistic, and sustainable.
All right. So you've mentioned co-leadership. Let's talk about the social-cultural realities.
Okay.
In Africa, in general, there's a narrative that women generally are supposed to be in the kitchen. and supposed to be in the home to man the home while the man is on the labor front, to chart a new course for the workforce and providing for the family, and for a lot of persons of the Christian proclivity, they believe that this is the traditional norm. Adam was first in the field and Eve was later provided. But then, looking at all of this, how would you respond to claims that women's leadership issues should be addressed even within the home before entering national governance issues?
Well, like I said, it's so you know the thing about culture, right? Culture is, you know, a system that is designed to preserve a society. One of the fundamental things about culture is that it is supposed to be positive in its nature. If it starts to hurt members of your society or be anti-human, then that culture is not serving society. It has now become destructive. That's to say that culture did not make man. Man made culture. And a man, including men and women, if they decide that this culture now does not serve the context of society as it is today, then it needs to change. You know, so also down to this whole conversation, I know I might be striking a chord here, but also down to this whole conversation about religion, right? You know, anytime someone says that, you know, women, this, I always ask them, amongst Jesus' disciples, didn't you see women there too? Didn't they follow? Didn't they walk? Didn't they support? Didn't they preach?
You were not mentioned.
Sorry?
They weren't mentioned.
But Mary Magdalene was there. We had let's even talk about.
She wasn't a disciple.
Yeah, but she pretty much counted as one.
She was a lover of the gospel.
But she pretty much accompanied them, and she was the women were the first people that saw Jesus out of the tomb, not the men.
Just to create some level of acceptance. But the assignment was not to the women. But it has to do with leadership.
But do we talk about the women who also gave to Jesus's ministry? We had a very, I've forgotten her name, whether it was Lydia or so, who sold purple linen, but a very powerful woman who had wealth. And if you have wealth in our society, you have leadership. So we can't, or do we even talk about Esther, who was the whole queen? Or do we talk about Deborah, who Barak said, if you don't follow me, I cannot go? Was the mantle not given unto her? So, you know, I think we're not here to talk about scriptural basis, because I'm a Christian as well. But I think we just need to stop using, you know, things like culture, and religion and culture sometimes can be intertwined to promote inequity and injustices in our society. Because if we can't believe across all spectrums of religion, that at least the minimum that we practice today, ranging from Christianity to Islam, that injustice is not something that is allowed in the tenets of, you know, the holy books, right? So it's a critical part of our social engineering as a society. And the issue with that, and I know I'm jumping ahead, right? But you see the issue with the reserve seats bill. You see this conversation on sociocultural norms that we're having here. That reserve seats bill is trying to fast track that process of rewiring social norms and making it more acceptable sociocultural wise to see women in those positions of leadership, so that the rest of society can catch up. Because if you ask the rest of society to catch up, it will take the passing of several generations before they come to that natural progression of renewed sociocultural norms, where it's okay to say woman and it's okay to say a man, both are the helm of leadership, and it's normal. It's nothing shocking. So that's what that bill is trying to do. But meanwhile, us as a society, right, of course, those things interplay very well in the home. Because apart from the media, the media is the greatest agent of socialization in society. Apart from the media, the home should actually follow after that, right? Because the home is where, you know, young people grow up, etc. That's where you form your foundational values as a human being and as a human person. And then before you get introduced to the phones and, you know, the TVs and etc. Because even my 3-year-old daughter, she give her Bluetooth and she says, no, that's for boys. Where did she learn it? It's from YouTube. So you see how we say media is the greatest agent of socialization, right? And the entire blue is for anybody. If I like blue, you like blue. There's nothing wrong with blue, right? But, you know, like I say, human beings are literally, individual human beings are a reflection of society. If we really do also want to deal with those harmful social norms at the fundamental basis of it, we also need to look at the influencing institutions within our society. And what is that? The media, the religious institutions, the cultural institutions, and the government, and the schools. Those are the influencing institutions that make up and influence society and the people within society. So then interrogate, what is the media saying about gender equality? What are the schools saying about gender equality? What are the churches or the mosques saying about gender equality? Should women, lead? They then influence society, which people then carry into their homes to form a level of indoctrination. But I'm happy to say that, because I'm a civil society person, that over the course of years, different civil society actors have been having very mutual and very enjoyable conversations with different stakeholders. The mosque, the churches, the schools, and the media, saying how we do need to change these perspectives if we want to have a more sustainable future. Because I remember I said something at the beginning of this interview. The future of the workforce in the next few years in this world is going to be largely determined by people in Africa. And also people in Nigeria, because we are the largest black nation on the earth. If you want to progress to a place where you can actually take responsibility on a global stage, we have to make sure that our fundamentals are right. Our systems are inclusive and holistic so that we can put the best out there into the world. So this is, maybe people should look at it that this is not just a gender equality conversation and women saying they want to be in front. It's also about your relevance and survival at the global stage. Think about it that way. Do you always want to remain in the back, or do we want to position ourselves in the front for the next, decade and decades after that?
Well, Mrs. Adejuwon, let's come back to you on
Okay.
Of course, I've listened to you speak on different fora, and you've been championing women involvement in governance. I'm curious at this point. What inspired you to personally champion women's leadership across sectors?
What inspired me was injustice, and this is I think this is my origin story. When I was very young, I grew up in Port Harcourt. So I grew up in main places: Port Harcourt, Enugu, Lagos, everywhere, Kebbi, Abuja, Nam, so everywhere. But back to the point, when I was growing up, I remember I was being taken to school very young. I think I wasn't even in primary one. It was a very early memory. And I remember being in the car, the back seat, and the driver being in front. And there were these kids that were hawking things. I can't remember what they were hawking, but they were hawking things. Early morning traffic, you can imagine, that's before 8 a.m. And I was like, at that point, I didn't understand why I was in the car and I was being driven to school, and they were out on the streets selling, whatever it was, hawking. My very young mind couldn't exactly understand, and that memory followed me, through my life, and it just, gave me this certain discontent and dissatisfaction with the level of inequality that we saw in our society. So, even where did I start from? I didn't even start from, from gender. I actually started from, I don't like how our society is unequal. I don't like the way that I am here or you are here, or even me, I'm here and you are here. Do you understand? A good friend of mine who ran in Ekiti state elections and unfortunately has passed said that the only difference between the rich and the poor should be luxury. And that's something that everyone should understand. The only difference between the rich and the poor should be luxury. The fact that you're hawking and I'm here, the fact that you're begging me for food, or the fact that me, I'm here and I don't have access to some things, basic things. We see how house rent is now in Abuja. You can't buy a house in this city without maybe looking for a loan or something somewhere. These are the challenges, right? But you have colleagues out there in the UK and Canada, and they're telling you, oh, I have my own house, and you're here struggling to pay how much in rent. How much is rent now? 7.5 million etc. These are the conversations, and that inequality led me into social justice. And then I'm a writer, so I used to write very long articles on Facebook, and then I started writing for online platforms. And then I said, you know what, I want to learn more about politics, because maybe the only way to address this level of inequality is to enter politics. And I entered into politics, and I got the shock of my life when people were abusing me based on my size and my gender, telling me they had my type at home. And I said, oh, so this is the problem. This is one of the greatest mediums of inequality and inequity in our society. And I wrote a book about it called Girls Just Want to Run, and it's been this journey ever since.
So, if you could redesign Nigerians' governance framework to elevate women, what 3 changes would you implement immediately?
Well, first things first, the reserve seats bill has to be in place. That's the first thing. If you go to the second thing, I would, and this is something that different countries have instituted, not just in Africa but globally, to ensure that not just representation in terms of public sector governance, but budget, procurement, everything is issued out with a level of balance. Is a gender monitoring office. So what a gender monitoring office is that it looks at everything in governance. Like I said, from budgets to finances to hiring to procurement to everything, to make sure that the processes within government are created or structured in such a way that everybody is included. Because really, now it's, and I'm saying this, that it now looks like it's obviously now the conversation is on women because women are unequally represented. But gender actually comprises of everybody, both genders. Now, in society, it was like as if the men were not being equally represented. That would be a need to now tip the scales more to make sure both are represented. But a gender monitoring office makes sure that what your budgets, what do they look like, how are they servicing XYZ, this, and social inclusion. Social inclusion is a thing because when we're even looking at these budgets, nobody talks about people, PWDs, persons with disabilities. Right? Nobody talks about them. They just segment them to one part because they feel like as if it's better to ignore them. But social inclusion is a critical part of that equity that we're looking for society. That's what a gender, it's part of the mandates that, should even be, I think, in the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, I think, or I can't remember. But some of those things that you can include. So those two things, the affirmative quota law, right, and then the gender monitoring office, and then other things could basically be built around capacity building, to be honest. No, sorry, I take that back. Political parties, because they are now, we don't have an independent candidacy option in our politics. But political parties, you see them, they are the behemoths of obstruction in our political ecosystem. They define who will go and who will not go. You have women that the political parties will come on press and say today, oh, we are giving women 50% of the funds. Yes, I know them personally. And then when the women then go to take the funds 50%, right? Let's say it's 1 million or 2 million. You see how much they are selling forms now today. If you're not a thief, you can't buy that form. Or if they're not crowdfunding for your election, you can't buy that form. And the women come and take you 50%. And the women will campaign with everything. And you can be sure if they go into the primaries, they win the election. And then when they get to the primaries, the party leaders will call and say, oh yeah, let's come and sit down and talk. Hello, madam, you cannot, you will drop down for this person. He's a preferred person. When he gets into office, he will maybe make an SA commissioner. Why? Excuse me, sir, why? Then I said, because you bought from at half price. This man has been the one paying the rent for this secretariat, etc., giving everybody money, so he has to clinch the tickets. These are things that happen to women. That's why. Are
women ready for this all expenses? Are women ready for governance in Nigeria?
Women are ready for governance.
In order to reimagine the governance policies.
Women are ready for governance, which is maybe the issue that I said is the financial conversation. In INEC rules, we say that a person is not supposed to spend so amount in elections. How much do people really spend? Maybe that's the next question. We did not too young to run for Yaga, right? Maybe we should do not too poor to run, because this question is not even about women. It's about young people in this country. Young people, if you're not a thief or you're not crowdfunding for election, you cannot run as a young person in Nigeria to win. And that's just the honest truth. And it's just unfortunate that women have the intersecting jeopardy in the sense that they are women, so they will be discriminated on gender, and they are in the part where the financial power is not too much. It's a double jeopardy. But young people, I told you, even young men today that want to run for office, you should see what happens to them when they run and don't win.
Well, that's quite interesting. So as we begin to wrap up, a lot of women are looking up to you right now.
To me? Are you sure?
A lot of women are looking up to you, following the NAF Foundation. We've interacted with a lot of young persons that are aspiring to even want to come up the ladder and pursue some of the narrative that you've exemplified across board. But then, looking at all of this and the young people, where do you see the future of young women in cross-sector leadership within the next decade? Are women going to rise up to this, or they're going to fall asleep in the toll gates of success, especially within the political brackets?
It's not a matter of whether young women. For me personally, I think the future is incredibly bright, because the caliber of young men I see today who are getting interested in public office, writing policy papers, putting policy papers.
Because I'm asking that question because see more women in TikTok right now.
Yes, now
on TikTok.
Yes,
and we see the future generation right now trying to exemplify some narrative on TikTok. I'm asking, are we ready for it? Are these young women ready for leadership?
Why don't you give young women a chance to try? You say, wait, hold on. You say, because maybe you should come outside and see the ones that are moving.
We've been outside. That's why I said a lot of them are looking up to you. But then, right now, in practicality,
yes, in practicality,
we see TikTok more girls trying to dance on the streets.
They should dance on the streets.
Well, a lot of them are trying to. A lot of them are trying to even do a lot of activities within the TikTok space. Can we say this is a practical demonstration of readiness for leadership?
I think you're judging a whole generation by people on TikTok. Wait, yes, and
I don't want to mention Instagram.
No,
I don't want to mention
because
Twitter. I don't want to mention other social media platforms. I'm just taking TikTok for a case study.
Even TikTok across Instagram and Twitter, right? See, the truth is that not everybody's going to run for office. That's the honest truth. Even those ones you see that are dancing on the streets, go to America and see some of them that TikTok is all they do. And then look at the elections that just held between the Democratic Party and Republican Party. Did you see Kamala Harris? I'm not pitching my attention to anybody, but did you see how she was able to drag? The next thing she's going to this podcaster, the next one she's going to this influencer, the next one she's going to this one that's on TikTok. Everyone has their uses. Not everybody is going to run for leadership. That's one thing you need to understand. And then for everyone that is on TikTok that you see that is dancing and passing away the time, there are 10 more in communities that are fundraising and paying with their blood to make sure somebody has drinking water or children have money to go to school. Those are, to be honest, and those are the people that we want to position. Everyone has their role to play in a democracy. Some people will only vote. Some people will be the ones to platform politicians and good, credible politicians on their platforms. Some people will be the ones that will contribute to campaigns. Maybe they are making money from TikTok. Maybe if I come and meet the person, can you donate to my campaign? You might donate some few millions. Everybody has their role in a democracy, and not everyone will enter public office. But that's the point. Focus on your rights as a citizen. Those that want to run should run, and you should work to remove the barriers from them so that they can run equitably on the same playing ground. Simple and short.
Well, that brings me to my final question at this point in time. Okay. There have been whispers that Nafisat Atiku Adejuwon will be running for a political office come 2027. Well, let's get you even break the news. Are we seeing you on the ballot come 2027?
Unfortunately not. I believe the article was written about 2-3 years ago, I think on Zikoko, but unfortunately not. I will be working behind the scenes to support other young women within the FCT and nationwide who will be running for office. So you can see, if you want to come to my party, I will not mention the party on live television, but if you want to come to my party and see me, no problem. That's where I'll be working, within the party, supporting people. Because 2027 is I think it's a very pivotal election for this country, especially given everything that we've seen so far over the past 2 years. And I'm just going to end it there.
So, invariably you're saying that you'll be working behind the scene. So the various young ladies that are looking up to you right now will not be seeing you on the pages or the ballots.
No, they will not be seeing me on the ballot, but they'll be seeing me very well on the playing ground.
So which example are we setting for young people that are looking up to you right now?
The example that I'm setting is that they should get involved.
And, you are not participating? As a leader, leading by example.
As a leader, you also have to be strategic and do what you need to do for the long term. If I come out in 2027 and say I want to run, who is going to fund me? These are the different conversations, and then of course,
Mr. Adejuwon is capable. So
and then of course you need to look at the timing. You, as a leader, you need to do what is best. The conversation right now is on the reserve seats bill. Let's get that passed, and then we can do that hoorah, and then we move straight into 2027 elections and put the people that we believe we need to be there. If it's a Kairos moment and it says, oh, this person is good enough, I'll be like, okay, great, I'm happy and ready to do it. But for now, there is a lot of internal structure building that we need to do to make sure that the house we are in is habitable for us. If not, then we're not doing anything, to be honest.
Well, I've been speaking to Nafisa Satiku Adejuwon, who's the Executive Director of NAF Foundation for Young Women. And we'll be talking about trying to reimagine the women in cross-sector policies. So, well, at this point, I want to say it's a delight to have you join us on Correro.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, this is how far we can go tonight on the show. Don't forget that you can join us across all our social media platforms currently showing on your screen. And you can also download the Rapid TV app on your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcasts. My name is Godwin Sunday. Like I always say, always remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye for now.